When you learn to let go, you also learn to fly. Something invisible is pressing on your chest right now. It has no shape, no sound, yet it follows you everywhere. It sits with you when you wake up. It whispers when the world goes quiet. It drains your energy without asking permission. This weight is not physical, but it is real. And the moment you recognize it, your life begins to change. Stay with this till the end, because what you will gain is clarity most people search for their entire lives. You move forward every day, but something keeps pulling you backward. Not with force, with memory, with emotion, with unfinished thoughts that never truly rest. The mind remembers what the heart never released, and slowly, without noticing, you begin to carry more than you were meant to carry. This weight is built from moments you replay, words you wish you never heard, choices you wish you could undo, people you tried to hold on to when they were already gone. The mind clings because it believes holding on equals safety. It believes that if you keep the past close, you can protect yourself from future pain. But psychology teaches a painful truth. The mind cannot protect you from pain by reliving it. It only multiplies it. You may call it loyalty, you may call it love, you may call it responsibility, but deep down it is attachment. And attachment has a cost. It costs peace. It costs focus. It costs growth. Every thought you refuse to release becomes a weight your soul must carry. Notice how heavy life feels when nothing is technically wrong. Notice how tired you feel even after resting. This is emotional weight. The brain was never designed to hold on to everything forever. It was designed to learn, adapt, and move forward. When it stays stuck, stress becomes chronic, anxiety becomes familiar, and exhaustion becomes normal. Most people don't realize this weight exists. They blame the world, they blame circumstances, they blame time. But the truth is quieter. The burden is internal. The mind keeps gripping what the heart is afraid to lose. Not because it brings happiness, but because it brings familiarity. And the brain loves familiarity more than freedom. This is why letting go feels threatening. When you release something, the mind panics. It asks, who am I without this pain? Who am I without this story? Identity becomes tangled with suffering. And as long as suffering feels like identity, letting go feels like losing yourself. But listen carefully. What you are carrying is not who you are. It is what happened to you. There is a difference. And that difference is the doorway to freedom. Right now, you may feel strong for holding on. You may feel responsible. You may feel noble. But strength is not measured by how much pain you can endure. Strength is measured by how much weight you are willing to release to grow. The strongest minds are not the ones that carry the most. They are the ones that choose wisely what deserves space inside them. The silent weight you carry affects how you speak, how you react, how you decide. It shortens patience. It sharpens anger. It weakens joy. Over time, it reshapes your personality. You stop dreaming big because dreaming feels risky. You stop trusting because trusting feels unsafe. You stop moving freely because everything feels heavy. Yet none of this is permanent. The moment you become aware of this weight, you interrupt the cycle. Awareness is power. Psychology proves that awareness alone can reduce emotional intensity. When you name what you carry, you loosen its grip. When you observe it without judgment, it begins to lose control. You were not meant to live bent under emotional baggage. You were meant to move light, to think clear, to choose freely. But freedom begins with honesty. Honest recognition of what you're holding on to. Honest acceptance that holding on is hurting you more than helping you. And here is the reward for staying until the end of this journey. You will not just understand letting go. You will feel lighter. You will learn how to release without fear. And you will discover why the moment you stop gripping the past, life finally gives you room to rise. This is where it begins. Not with action, not with change, but with awareness. The silent weight you carry is not your enemy. It is your signal. And once you listen to it, everything that comes next becomes possible. Once you become aware of the weight you carry, a deeper question appears. If this weight hurts so much, why is it so hard to put it down? The answer lives inside the human mind. The brain is not designed to make you free. It is designed to make you feel safe. And safety to the brain means what is familiar, not what is healthy. Letting go feels difficult because the mind confuses pain with protection. What you know feels safer than what you don't. Even if what you know is heavy, painful, or exhausting, it feels predictable. Predictability gives the brain a false sense of control, and control feels like survival. Psychologically, attachment activates fear. Fear of loss, fear of emptiness, fear of the unknown. The mind asks, if I release this, what will replace it? And when there is no clear answer, resistance is born. The brain would rather stay in a familiar struggle than step into an unfamiliar peace. This is why people cling to old stories, old relationships, old regrets, old identities. Not because they feel good, but because they feel known. The mind builds identity around what it carries. Pain becomes part of the self-image. Suffering becomes proof of meaning. Without it, the mind feels exposed. Another reason letting go feels hard is emotional investment, time, energy, sacrifice. The mind hates the idea that something mattered deeply and still had to be released. It feels like failure. It feels like loss. But in truth, growth always requires outgrowing something. Neuroscience shows that the brain forms strong emotional loops. Repeated thoughts create neural pathways. The more you revisit the past, the stronger the pathway becomes. Letting go means breaking that loop, and breaking a loop feels uncomfortable before it feels freeing. The discomfort is not danger. It is withdrawal from familiarity. The mind resists because it is being asked to change direction, and change always feels like threat before it feels like relief. This is where most people stop. They mistake discomfort for a sign to hold on. But discomfort is not a warning. It is a signal of transformation. When resistance shows up, it means something old is loosening its grip. Letting go feels hard because it challenges identity, comfort, and control. But what feels hard is often what heals. The weight does not fall instantly. It loosens gradually, and each small release teaches the mind a new truth. You can survive without what you once thought you needed. As resistance grows, it reveals something deeper. The belief that holding on gives control. The mind tells itself that if it keeps gripping the past, it can prevent pain from happening again. This belief feels logical. It feels protective, but it is an illusion. Control is not created by holding on. It is created by understanding what is truly within your power. The human mind overestimates how much control it has over life. It tries to manage outcomes, people, and emotions that were never meant to be controlled. When reality does not obey, frustration appears, anxiety grows, and the grip tightens even more. The tighter the grip, the heavier the weight becomes. Psychologically, the need for control comes from fear. Fear of chaos, fear of loss, fear of uncertainty. When something painful happens, the mind responds by tightening its hold. It believes that vigilance equals safety. But constant vigilance exhausts the nervous system. The body stays alert. The mind never rests. Peace becomes unreachable. Control also feeds the illusion of responsibility. The mind convinces you that if you let go, something will fall apart, that it is your job to hold everything together. This belief creates silent pressure. It turns life into a burden instead of an experience. You stop living and start managing. True control works differently. It begins with acceptance. Acceptance does not mean approval. It means recognizing reality as it is, not as you wish it to be. When you accept what you cannot change, energy returns to what you can change. Your thoughts, your actions, your direction. Letting go is not losing control. It is choosing where control actually belongs. You cannot control the past. You cannot control other people. You cannot control every outcome. But you can control how long you carry what hurts you. You can control what stories you continue to feed. You can control whether pain becomes a prison or a lesson. When the illusion of control fades, clarity rises. The mind relaxes. The nervous system begins to settle. Stress decreases not because life is perfect, but because you stop fighting what already exists. This is where strength begins to shift. Strength no longer looks like force. It looks like wisdom. You stop gripping. You start guiding. And the weight that once demanded constant effort begins to lose its power. When the illusion of control begins to fade, another truth becomes clear. Much of what we call love is actually fear. Attachment often hides behind beautiful words, but its roots are anxious. The mind clings not because it cares deeply, but because it is afraid of emptiness. Love allows space. Attachment demands closeness. Love trusts. Attachment monitors. Love wants growth. Attachment wants certainty. Psychology shows that attachment is driven by the need to feel secure, not the desire to see something thrive. This is why attachment feels heavy. It is fueled by fear of loss, not appreciation of presence. The mind confuses attachment with loyalty. It believes that holding on proves commitment. But holding on out of fear slowly turns connection into control. You begin to measure your worth by how tightly you can keep something in your life. When it starts to slip, anxiety replaces peace. Attachment also distorts perception. You stop seeing things as they are. You see them as you need them to be. Reality becomes uncomfortable, so the mind resists it. This resistance creates inner conflict. One part of you senses the truth. Another part refuses to accept it. Love, on the other hand, is light. It does not demand permanence. It values presence. It understands that change is natural. When love exists without attachment, there is freedom. Freedom to grow. Freedom to move. Freedom to evolve without guilt. The fear beneath attachment comes from scarcity. The belief that if this leaves, something essential will be missing forever. But this belief is learned, not true. The mind underestimates its own resilience. It forgets how many times it has survived change before. Letting go of attachment does not mean losing love. It means removing fear from love. When fear leaves, clarity enters. You stop gripping. You start appreciating. You stop forcing. You start allowing. This shift is powerful. Emotional energy that was trapped in anxiety becomes available for growth. Relationships feel lighter. Decisions feel cleaner. The weight begins to lift not because you lost something, but because you stopped confusing fear with love. When attachment loosens, the heart does not close. It opens wider, and in that openness, real connection finally becomes possible. When attachment loosens, the mind begins to notice something it has ignored for a long time. How deeply the past still controls the present, not openly, quietly, through habits of thought, emotional reactions, and inner dialogue that repeat without permission. The past does not trap you by existing. It traps you when it becomes your reference point. The mind keeps scanning old experiences to decide how to feel now. One painful memory teaches the brain to stay alert. One betrayal teaches it to stay guarded. One failure teaches it to doubt itself. Over time, these lessons harden into identity. Psychology explains this through memory conditioning. The brain stores emotional experiences more strongly than neutral ones. Painful moments leave deeper marks because the brain wants to protect you from repeating them. But protection can turn into limitation. What once helped you survive can later prevent you from living. The past becomes a filter. You don't see situations as they are. You see them through what happened before. Opportunities feel risky. Trust feels dangerous. Joy feels temporary. The mind reacts to the memory, not the moment. This is how the present loses its freshness. You are physically here, but mentally somewhere else. Old conversations replay. Old mistakes resurface. Old emotions rise as if nothing has changed. The body responds as if the threat is still real, even when it is gone. The mind believes it is being careful. In reality, it is being controlled. Controlled by a version of life that no longer exists. Every time the past is used to define the present loses its power to transform you. Letting go does not mean forgetting the past. It means changing its role. The past is meant to inform, not to imprison. When it becomes a prison, growth stops. When it becomes a lesson, growth accelerates. Releasing the past requires courage, not because the past is strong, but because familiarity is comforting. The mind resists releasing old pain because it knows how to navigate it. What it fears is the unknown freedom that comes after. But the present moment is the only place where life responds to you. When the past loosens its grip, attention returns, energy returns, choice returns. And slowly, the present stops being a shadow of what was and starts becoming a foundation for what can be. When the present finally comes back into focus, a quiet moment appears. Not dramatic, not loud, just clear. This is the moment when you realize something simple but powerful. Carrying this weight is a choice. It may not have started as a choice, but it has become one. Releasing does not begin with forgetting. It begins with deciding, a decision made internally, often without words. The decision that says, I will no longer bleed for what already happened. This is not denial. This is ownership of your inner world. Psychology shows that real change happens when awareness meets intention. Awareness shows you what is hurting. Intention decides what happens next. Without intention, awareness becomes observation without movement. With intention, awareness becomes transformation. This moment feels uncomfortable because the mind expects resistance. It expects struggle. It expects pain. But release is not force. It is permission. Permission to stop fighting reality. Permission to stop replaying what cannot be changed. Permission to move forward without dragging the past behind you. The mind may argue. It may bring reasons. It may bring fear. That is normal. The brain is adjusting to a new direction, but beneath the noise, something deeper begins to relax. The nervous system senses that the battle is ending. And when the battle ends, energy returns. Letting go is not a single act. It is a series of small choices made consistently. Each time a memory arises and you choose not to follow it. Each time an old emotion appears and you allow it to pass without judgment. Each time you remind yourself that growth requires space. This decision changes your relationship with pain. Pain is no longer an enemy to fight or a story to repeat. It becomes information, a signal that something was learned. And once the lesson is learned, the pain no longer needs to stay. The moment you decide to release, you stop asking the past for permission to live fully. You stop waiting for closure from things that cannot speak anymore. You take responsibility for your peace. This is not weakness. This is courage at its highest level. The courage to trust yourself beyond what you have known. The courage to step forward without guarantees. And in that courage, the weight begins to shift. Not all at once, but enough for you to feel the difference. Once the decision to release is made, something unexpected begins to happen. Fear starts to lose its intensity, not because life suddenly becomes easy, but because the inner struggle begins to dissolve. Fear feeds on resistance. The more you fight what already exists, the louder fear becomes. Psychologically, resistance keeps the nervous system in a constant state of alert. The body reacts as if danger is always near. Muscles stay tense. Breathing becomes shallow. Thoughts race ahead, searching for problems that may never come. This is not awareness. This is survival mode. When resistance ends, the nervous system receives a new signal. Safety. Not external safety, but internal stability. The mind realizes it no longer needs to guard every thought or outcome. This does not remove challenges, it removes unnecessary suffering. Fear often disguises itself as protection. It says it is keeping you alert, keeping you prepared. But in truth, fear only prepares you to expect loss. It trains the mind to imagine worst outcomes and treat them as reality. Letting go interrupts this training. When you stop resisting, fear has nothing to hold on to. There is no inner battle for it to amplify. Emotions still arise, but they pass more quickly. Thoughts still appear, but they do not dominate. The mind becomes an observer instead of a prisoner. This shift is powerful. You begin to respond instead of react. Decisions come from clarity, not urgency. You no longer rush to control what feels uncertain. You allow yourself to stand steady inside uncertainty. Fear leaves not because you become fearless, but because you become present. Presence grounds the mind in what is real, not what is imagined. And most fear lives in imagined futures and remembered pasts, not in the current moment. As resistance fades, trust begins to grow. Trust in your ability to adapt. Trust in your ability to handle discomfort. Trust in your ability to move forward even when the path is not fully visible. This is how emotional strength is built, not by eliminating fear, but by removing the struggle around it. Fear becomes a signal, not a dictator. And when fear no longer controls your inner world, space opens for something lighter, calm, confidence, and the quiet sense that you are no longer fighting yourself. As fear loosens its grip, the mind begins to feel unfamiliar in a new way, quieter, wider, lighter. This is not emptiness. This is space. Space that was always there, but hidden beneath noise, tension, and constant mental effort. Psychologically, the mind operates like a container. When it is overfilled with unresolved thoughts and emotions, clarity cannot enter. Every new experience competes with old weight. When you let go, you don't lose anything essential. You create room. This mental space changes how you think. Thoughts slow down. You no longer rush to conclusions. You notice details you once missed. The mind becomes less reactive and more reflective. Instead of being pulled by every emotion, you begin to observe them with distance. Space inside the mind allows emotional regulation. The nervous system calms because it is no longer overwhelmed. Stress hormones decrease. Breathing deepens naturally. The body follows the mind when the mind is no longer under pressure. This is why letting go often feels like relief before it feels like joy. Relief comes from the absence of constant tension. Joy grows when space is filled with intention, not clutter. The mind finally has room to choose what deserves attention. With space, perspective returns. Problems that once felt massive shrink to their true size. You realize that not everything requires a reaction. Not every thought deserves belief. Not every emotion needs action. This realization is freedom. Mental space also strengthens focus. Energy that was trapped in worry becomes available for creativity, discipline, and purpose. You stop multitasking emotionally. You begin to move with direction. Most importantly, space reconnects you with yourself. Without noise, you hear your own intuition again. Without pressure, you sense what feels right. Decisions stop coming from fear or urgency. They come from alignment. This inner space becomes a foundation, a stable ground from which growth becomes possible. You are no longer crowded by the past or pulled by imagined futures. You are present. And in presence, the mind discovers its natural strength. Calm is not weakness. Stillness is not passivity. It is readiness. Readiness to move forward without carrying what no longer belongs to you.